Over 100 students at my school are missing. No one knows why. You know the feeling. Mid-June. Warm summer days. Pools. Ice cream. And school almost being out. Finals were just last week. I did okay this school year. Definitely not my best year. Being a junior at Cedar Mills High School. I've really learned my way around the building now. I feel like I can finally navigate my way around. And now I get to rightfully make fun of the freshmen. But as I said, it's not my best year. Especially after what has happened today. Since finals were over and there was only 5 days left of school. The day didn't consist of much. The teachers stopped caring. And every class basically became a free period. My friend Amanda and I share 5th period lunch and 6th period Spanish with Mrs. Gomez. Amanda is the stereotypical quiet girl except when it comes to our friend group. As we were walking together in the halls, we noticed the principal's office. Something was clearly happening. Teachers were coming in and out with worried looks on their face. School staff was screaming at each other. "What the hell is going on in there?" asked Amanda. "I don't know. You think a kid threw shit at the bathroom wall again?" I joked. "Before you ask. Yes, that did happen before." As we walked further down the hall, we saw a few security guards going into different classrooms, as if they were looking for something. When we got to Mrs. Gomez's class, she looked different than usual. She looked worried about something, almost frightened. Amanda and I took our seats at the back of the classroom. "Mrs. Gomez is giving off bad vibes," I whispered. Almost as soon as I said that, we could hear a voice over the intercom, saying, "All students, please report to the auditorium immediately for an emergency assembly." Students began pouring out of classrooms into the hallway. There are 3,200 students at Cedar Mills. It definitely isn't a small school, and there's no way the auditorium could hold us all. Usually they would only call students from certain grades, never all of us at once. When we got to the auditorium, we saw that the vice principal would stop everyone and ask for their name. He would then make a check on a paper on a clipboard, presumably taking attendance. The seats had all been filled with other students, meaning Amanda and I were forced to sit on the floor. Students all around us were mumbling and spouting theories for the strange assembly. Did someone bring a gun? Did someone vandalize the bathrooms? Did someone die? After what felt like eternity, the vice principal finally took to the stage to begin the assembly. "Good afternoon, students. Today's assembly is rather serious," he said with a slightly trembling voice. "There are currently 24 freshmen unaccounted for," he said. Amanda turned to me and whispered 24. 24 students were marked present in first period, but they were all marked absent from second, sixth period. The vice principal continued. "None of them showed up for this assembly. When we checked the cameras, nobody was seen leaving the building. If you see anyone hiding in the halls or the bathroom, please let us know." After we were dismissed and back in the halls, I said it is a bit weird that 24 kids are just gone like that. I mean, how can they all hide so easily inside the school? They're probably just getting high under the stairs, speculated Amanda. After the bell rang, I went to go meet up with Amanda and the rest of our friend group. The group consisted of me, Amanda, Jimmy, Tim, Sage, and McCoy. McCoy was the only one of us with a car, so each day he'd drive us to and from school. When I got to our usual meeting place on campus, I noticed Jimmy was there, but he was staring at something. Off in the distance, across the street from the school, was a huge crowd of students, all gathered around something. Some of them were screaming, "The hell is going on over there?" I asked. "Let's check it out," replied Jimmy. As we arrived to the group, I realized I couldn't see what it was due to. The amount of people in front of me. Jimmy is taller than me, so he was able to get a glimpse. "Jesus Christ," he said, with an uneasy tone. I tilted my head so I was finally able to get a glimpse. What I saw made my stomach drop. I felt sick. In the middle of the crowd, on a bush, was the body of a freshman at my school. He was covered in head to toe with blood. There was a visible dent in his head, as if he'd been struck by an object. I knew him, not as a friend, but I'd seen him in the halls. His name was Jared. Everybody loved him. He was athletic, played football, had his whole life ahead of him. His head had no face. He had been skinned. The police came a while later. They ushered everyone out of the area and kept a few for questioning. In the crowd had also been Sage and Tim. And we met up with them shortly after. Sage was crying, and Tim was trying to console her. "We have to do something," Jimmy said, almost angrily. "Us? Are you insane? Let the police handle it," I said. "No," said Jimmy. "They said none of the freshmen ever left the building on cams. That means somehow they had to have gone around it." "What are you saying?" I said, confused. "I'm saying that there has to be some kind of tunnel in that basement. Please, can we go inside and look?" "Where in the hell are you getting this from? Why do you think there's a tunnel in the basement? It's been a rumor for years. It was even around when my brother went here. Can we just go home?" pleaded Sage. I checked my phone to call McCoy to track him down. I have 5 missed calls from him and a text reading, "Where are you?" Then I looked at the time. It was already 5:30. School lets out at 3. McCoy and Amanda were already home, and the 4 of us were stuck here. I left my backpack inside anyway. If you want we can check out the basement on the way, said Tim. Wait, Sage responded. Don't you think there are going to be police officers inside since 24 kids just went missing? This sounds like a bad idea. Come on, Sage, Jimmy said. It will be quick. And I haven't seen any police in the school, only at the murder scene. We all reluctantly agreed and walked back to the school's campus. As we passed by the death scene, we saw that it had been blocked off by yellow tape and the police were gathered around it. However, not one police officer was on the school's campus. To our surprise, the doors were unlocked and we didn't need to be buzzed in like we usually do. There was no one in the building. It was dead silent and dark. No lights were on, which is unusual, even for after school hours. Where did you leave your book bag? I asked him. Oh, I didn't even bring it to school. I just wanted you guys to come in. It will be quick. Fine. But me and Sage will be the lookouts. You two go in the basement yourselves. We walked to the basement entrance, which was a door under a stairwell. Good luck. And call us if you need anything, I said. My phone is dead, said Jimmy. Mine too. We'll just yell if we see the murderer, joked Tim. Sage and I watched as the metal door slammed behind them. We looked down the halls in both directions, just making sure no one is coming. Tommy, I really don't have a good feeling about this, said Sage. Me neither. I can barely see anything. The only light source was the fading late afternoon sunlight through the windows. It was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. If there was anyone else in the building, we would know. Seconds turned to minutes, minutes to about an hour. Sage, they would have been back up by now. We should go down there and check on them, I said. No, Sage replied. I'm not going down there. Call McCoy or go outside and get help. Sage, the police can't know we're here. Then let's just go. It's getting late. Please, Tommy, call McCoy. I called McCoy but it went straight to voicemail. Please, let's just go outside and call an Uber then. Tim and Jimmy can find a way to get home themselves. No, I'm not leaving them. Well, I am, exclaimed Sage. She walked up to the door and pushed. Nothing. She pushed again. The door wouldn't move. Is it locked? Sage asked, trembling. I tried opening it. I think so, I said. Tommy, I don't even think that's legal or possible. Something bad is happening. You need to call the police or keep trying, McCoy. I'm scared, said Sage, on the verge of tears. That's when we heard it, footsteps, faint and distant, but unmistakable. They were not coming from the basement. Someone's here, I whispered. Sage was now silently crying. The footsteps slowly grew louder and closer. Sage, I said quietly, we need to go to the basement. At this point it's our only option. Sage nodded and we opened the creaky metal door and ventured down the stairs into the dimly lit room. It was a small room, only about the size of a classroom. There was some storage boxes filled with school supplies and 2 photocopiers. The thing that really unnerved me though, was that there was absolutely no sign of Tim and Jimmy. Upon discovering that our friends were gone, Sage completely broke down and began full-on crying. Shh, I said, trying to quiet her down. It worked. We hid behind some boxes although we could no longer hear the footsteps from the basement. Where the duck could they have gone? It's a tiny room, I whispered. Maybe through that door. Sage pointed out that there was another door, but a photocopier was in front of it. The photocopier looked too heavy to move. We could now hear the footsteps again, this time much closer than before. It sounded like this person was walking down the exact hallway Sage and I had just looked down earlier. I tried calling McCoy one last time, this time leaving him a voice message telling him that we're at the school and he needs to come pick us up. I can hear the footsteps now. The footsteps are almost here as I type this. Please give me advice. Anything. The footsteps stopped, abruptly, as if this person was just standing there, just outside the stairwell. Sage and I held our breaths for what felt like hours. If I had to guess, it was around 9 p.m. I would have called the police. I didn't care about getting in trouble anymore, except my phone had finally died, it having been over 12 hours since I last plugged it in. The footsteps continued, this time, slowly getting more faint. He's leaving, I whispered. Then they started growing louder again. This time, they were not above us. They were next to us, behind the door blocked by the photocopier. We heard sound of the main school doors being swung open and shut. There was a second person. The basement door creaking open echoed through the tiny room, and with each step downstairs my heart paced faster. The single dim light in the room wasn't bright enough to illuminate the entire place. The staircase was completely dark from our perspective. As the shadowy figure slowly came into view, I instantly recognized him. McCoy. Sage and I breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing the face of our friend. Where's Jimmy? Where's Tim? What are you guys doing here? I don't know. Jimmy and Tim wanted to come down here and explore. We don't know where they are, I admitted. We think they're in there, Sage explained, pointing to the rusty door behind the photocopier. Jimmy, Tim, you there? Yelled McCoy. No response. The footsteps from that room continued, distant, but audible. McCoy tried to brute force the photocopier out of the way, but to my surprise, Even as someone as well built and muscular as McCoy couldn't even move it. Let's just go, I said. We're not even supposed to be down here, and I'm sure Tim and Jimmy can find a way out of here. Are you sure, Tommy? No. But we can't stay here. I know how evil I look doing this, but they're gone. We have to leave. The three of us slowly tread up the stairs through the rusty basement door, through the school doors which McCoy had propped open with his book bag. As we reached McCoy's black SUV, although there were only 3 of us present, Sage and I sat in the back row like usual. Nobody said a word. Instead of putting on indie music like he usually does, McCoy put on the news. The only thing the news even mentioned were the disappearances, which had now been confirmed to be over 110 freshmen and 4 juniors. I heard Sage mutter "holy shit" under her breath as it was announced. 5 more bodies had been discovered, all being struck with a large blunt object and parts of skin removed. 110 freshmen and 4 juniors. It's a bit odd that most of the missing were freshmen and there are 4 seemingly random juniors. Then it hit me that they were talking about us. We hadn't been in contact with anyone for over 6 hours. Sage, I exclaimed. I think we're reported missing. Shit, we need a cover story. She breathed. I'll just say I went home early and forgot to come back and drive you guys home. Just say your phones were dead. McCoy chimed in. When McCoy pulled up to my house, I could see that both my parents were on the porch. I ran out of the car. My parents had tears streaming down their faces. It was the first time seeing my father cry. Where were you? Cried my mom. My phone was dead. McCoy left and forgot to come back and get us. When I walked inside, the TV was on. It was showing the local news. They were still only talking about the disappearances. More were being reported by the hour. 110, 115, 120, 130. There were only 800 freshmen at my school in total. A good chunk of them were just gone. Despite all of this, the district is keeping the school open tomorrow. I'm sure as hell not going, I thought to myself. The next morning I am awoken by the sound of my phone ringing. I glance at it. It's McCoy. Come outside. We're here, he says. Are you seriously going? After what just happened? I asked, confused. We're going to find Jimmy and Tim, he insisted. I walked outside to McCoy's SUV. Amanda is sitting in the back with Sage, which is unusual because Amanda usually sits in the second row. You have to unlock the wheels on the photocopiers, Amanda said. I've seen teachers move them before. Today, all the students and teachers looked dazed, as if their minds were somewhere else. Not many students even showed up. In some classes there were only 2 other students besides myself. Not a single freshman showed up today. For obvious reasons. In 7th period the class was having a discussion about the disappearances. The typical "it's a hard time but we'll get through it" talk. I excused myself to use the restroom. I was supposed to meet up with Sage and then meet with McCoy and Amanda. As I walked down the halls, a voice could be heard over the intercom. Lockdown. Lockdown. Every light switched off, leaving the halls dark. The only source of illumination in the halls being red, flashing warning lights. There was a figure at the end of the hall, not visible at all except when the red light flashed. It was too dark and far to even see any features. I initially thought it was Sage, but I realized this figure was much taller and didn't have the body type of a female. I began slowly walking away from the figure, down the hall towards the stairwell. The cafeteria, where the 4 of us were going to meet up, is on the 1st floor while I'm on the 3rd. I turned my head back and noticed that the figure was closer than before, although I hadn't heard any footsteps or seen him walk. I ran. I didn't want this person to be near me. I turned into the stairwell and practically jumped down the stairs until I was on the 1st floor. That's when I saw it. A person laying on the ground in the middle of the hallway. A body, with some sort of liquid under it, presumably blood. If I chose to continue forward, I would have to walk over the body. If I were to move back, I'd have to face the man I saw before. I mustered up the courage to step over the body. Upon getting closer I came to a horrifying realization. The body seemed strangely familiar. It was tall, skinny, with a darker skin complexion. The face was missing again, probably skinned. The skull had been bashed in, but I recognized it as my friend Tim. Tim was a tall, skinny, nerdy Vietnamese kid. It was the exact same clothing he was wearing. I wanted to vomit. They were right. The killer had been in the basement. The whole time. I ran again. Without looking. I didn't care where I went. I just wanted to get away from the scene until I finally reached a dead end. I saw another person approaching to where I was. I began to realize I was under a stairwell. The same one that the basement door was under. The flashing red lights provided enough illumination to recognize that this person was Sage. What are you doing over here? Amanda and McCoy are in the cafeteria, but I couldn't get in because the doors are locked during lockdowns, explained Sage. Tim is dead, I said, still panting from running. Sage's caramel skin turned pale. What do you mean? I found his body. He's dead. I choked. I don't know what happened to Jimmy. Maybe he's still alive down there. I never thought I'd say this, but Tommy, we have to go down there, Sage said. I agreed. It was the only place to go during the lockdown. And now that we know how to open the door, we had a better chance of finding Jimmy. We creaked the old metal door open. This time, there was no light whatsoever. It was pitch black. I turned on the flashlight from my phone. Visibility was poor, but it was better than nothing. We ventured down into the darkness. Sage was able to open the switch that Amanda had talked about, and we could now push the photocopier to the side. I tried turning the doorknob. It wouldn't move. Locked. I can pick locks, said Sage. Especially an old one like this. There has to be a paperclip in one of these school supplies boxes. Then a sound I was all too familiar with started. Footsteps. I had memorized the pattern of footsteps I'd heard yesterday, like one usually does with their family. This was the same person, and it sounded like it was getting louder. Hurry up, whispered Sage. I'm trying. I can't find one, I answered. The footsteps only grew louder. I could now also make out the sound of jingling keys. Whoever this was is now going down the same hallway I had just ran down. Found it, I exclaimed. After digging through 2 boxes, the sound of the footsteps were closer than they had even been before, now under the same stairwell that we were just under. Please, Sage, are you almost done? I whispered. Yes, she responded. I'm so close. We could now both hear the unmistakable sound of the basement door opening. I got it, said Sage. She opened the door. Once again the room was pitch black. The footsteps were now coming down the basement stairs. We both ushered ourselves in. Close the door, I whispered, very quietly. Sage closed the door as quietly as she could. The source of the footsteps, whoever it was now in the basement. We kept our backs to the door, in case the person attempted to open it. The room smelled horribly. I wanted to puke after every single breath I took. Light began to seep from under the door, meaning the lights had been turned on in the main basement room. I turned on my phone flashlight once again, and what I saw made me sick to my stomach. This room was even smaller than the last one, with yet another door in it. The ground was covered in red, thick liquid, which I could only assume was blood. Hanging from the ceiling attached to a string was a human head, unrecognizable, with no skin, no eyes, and no nose. That wasn't the worst of it. The worst thing was the couch. It was a small couch, but completely made of human skin. I saw Sage cover her mouth in shock. I have never so desperately wanted to leave a place in my life. I don't know if that was Jimmy, but I hope to God it wasn't.